Welcome to the Stoic Responder Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Healy. As a special agent who spent more than 15 years conducting large-scale fraud, money laundering, and public corruption investigations, Stoic philosophy provided a mindset edge that became the foundation of my professional success. My mission today is to share those same ancient mindset lessons with you so that you can turn obstacles into opportunities and adversity into advantage. Time to muster up. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Stoic Responder Podcast. This is episode 83, Quality or Quantity. Before we get started, folks, as I always do, I want to remind you to check out the Overwatch Collective, my favorite 501c3, that is supporting the law enforcement community through providing mental health initiatives for our first responders, veterans, and their families. They go out and they actually pay for anonymous, free therapy services for our first responders, our veterans, and their families. I cannot think of anything more necessary in this environment than providing a resource to our first responders that's going to help save lives. The motto over there is one more is one less. And I take that to heart because one more individual we can provide services to is one less potential statistic. So please check them out and support them if you can over at the overwatchcollective.com. Number two, I want to give a shout out to Blue Badge Coffee Company. I am wearing one of their sweatshirts right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can check it out. It is one of my favorite sweatshirts. I wear it all the time, even though it is a billion degrees here in the Houston area. And I wear it because I like to support Blue Badge Coffee Company because they are providing their customers with the absolute best, highest quality premium coffee that their money can buy, but they also take a portion of each sale and donate it to law enforcement agencies around our great nation to assist them in funding or maintaining peer support and wellness programs for their officers. These programs are crucial for the physical and mental well-being of hardworking officers in the law enforcement agencies across our great country. You can check them out at bluebadgecoffee.com and support their very important work. And guys, let me make a quick note about this. Some of the first things that get cut when cities, when city councils, when these people who have been pushing this defund the police movement get their way, some of the first things that get cut in departments are these peer support programs and wellness programs that support our officers. I can't think of anything more ridiculous. You know, if you want to have good police, if your interest is in having better police officers, the last thing you want to do is cut off services that are helping them be less burnt out, show up as their best selves. But that's what gets cut first and foremost because they have to focus on enforcement priorities and other priorities when their budgets start getting cut. Blue Badge Coffee is doing a huge service to a lot of law enforcement agencies around the country by supporting their wellness and peer support programs. So please support them by buying some of their really tasty coffee or one of their great sweatshirts. All right. Getting into the meat of the episode, folks, I give you a quote from Seneca, and we're talking about courage today, so contextualize this quote. What's the point of having countless books and libraries whose titles could hardly be read through in a lifetime? The learner is not taught, but burdened by the sheer volume, and it's better to plant the seeds of a few authors than to be scattered about by many. All right. I feel personally attacked by Seneca as I'm reading this. As I look behind me on my bookshelf here, I have a boatload of books, most of which I've actually read, but a few I have not. A few are on my things to do list I'm trying to get to. And the reason a number of these are on my things to do list is because I like to read nonfiction. I like to read philosophy. I like to read things that are going to expand my mind and capacity, but I often find that I don't have the ability or the time to focus on those things between parenting, between keeping our businesses running, between taking care of things around the house. It's hard to find a quality, quiet time to sit down and really take something in that requires you to really engage your brain, which is why I love podcasts. It's why I love books on tape and audiobooks. But I feel a little bit personally attacked here because I have a number of books on my bookshelf that I've been trying to get to or that I haven't finished, and I feel like Seneca is really calling me out here. So again, the learner is not taught but burdened by the sheer volume. And it's better to plant the seeds of a few authors than to be scattered about by many. Yeah, so I tend to focus on 3 or 4 authors, Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, or people who write about them because I find that I get the most concentrated value from their writings. And this quote is, of course, no different. So let me attach this to a historical example that some of you, if you've taken, Western Civ or you've taken any of the classics, you're going to understand and recognize. So we're going to talk about Alexander the Great. He was, obviously existed 400 or 500 years before the Roman Stoics, but he existed just a few years before Zeno. In fact, I think they may have overlapped. I'm not sure. But Zeno and the school of Stoicism that he founded kind of followed in the death of Alexander the Great, that Hellenistic period, this kind of period of chaos in the world that followed the death of Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great is really a kind of a central character in the story of Stoicism. So let's dive in on an example, a historical example of quality versus quantity, and see if you can take something out of it. So while his achievements in conquering much of the ancient world are awe-inspiring, Alexander the Great's story also serves as a cautionary example for the perils of unchecked ambition and the constant need for more. The constant need to just keep piling up books on your shelf so you look like you're a person of letters, as Seneca is suggesting, versus a person who's actually internalizing and practicing the things that you're learning. So from a young age, Alexander, he was fascinating. He's a fascinating character because he displays a strong desire for greatness and a thirst for conquest from a young age. Of course, his father is the king of Macedon, King Philip II, and he sought to surpass those accomplishments that his very ambitious and accomplished father accomplished. And he dreamed of creating this vast empire, of really like uniting the Greek city-states. And he dreamed of being this kind of, this world-known figure, which he certainly became and remains to this day, thousands of years later. But while that ambition can be a driving force for progress, it can also lead to reckless decisions. It can lead to actions when they're not tempered with wisdom and restraint that can lead to your downfall. Now, as Alexander's empire expanded, and I'm giving you literally just like a just tiny little view. Volumes and volumes and volumes have been written about Alexander, so I'm not getting deep into it. This is just barely scratching the surface. But as the empire that he's creating expands, his hubris grows as well, right? He becomes arrogant, and that's kind of what happens when we're young men. I can remember getting out of the academy and being a young man and like walking into bars or walking into clubs and looking around and thinking about all the different moves and techniques that I could use to beat the crap out of everybody in there. I remember having this just outsized arrogance and confidence in my abilities and skills that probably didn't match reality. And that's what hubris really is. And Alexander, he kind of grows this hubris as well as his empire grows. He starts to believe in his own invincibility, his own divine destiny. And it leads to this dangerous level of a lack of self-awareness, a dangerous level of self-assuredness that didn't match with reality. And this belief in his own divinity ultimately contributed to his own downfall and the fragmentation of his empire after his death at the age of 32, because he didn't really set up the empire for continued success in his absence. It just kind of fell apart in his absence because he was so assured of his own destiny, his own quasi-divinity, his godlike ability to have whatever it was that he desired and wanted. Because, to be honest, his ambition served him well up until that point of his death. Now, we don't know exactly how Alexander died. He didn't die in battle. But many of us are going to fall into that same trap, right? Of constantly seeking the next material possession, constantly seeking the next conquest, constantly seeking that personal achievement, but not ever really being satisfied with what we have achieved, not really ever setting ourselves up for the what if, not engaging in that premeditatio malorum of what is the end goal of this? What is the end result of all of this? We just go back and do it again and do it again and do it again. We always want more, in other words. We're never satisfied. We never sit with what we have. And again, to start out with that quote again, what's the point of having countless books and libraries whose titles could hardly be read through in a lifetime? We're not taught by the acquisition of books. In fact, we're just burdened by the sheer volume of them. Rather, what if we took a few books and we read them and we absorbed them and we learned their lessons and then we applied those lessons to our personal lives? What if instead of constantly seeking more, trying to keep up with the Joneses, we were satisfied with what we did achieve and what we did have? What if, unlike Alexander, instead of just constantly trying to expand that hubris fueling us to constantly get more and more, we focus on doing the absolute best with that which we have before we expand to the next? What if instead of building the tower high, we built the foundation broad and strong? And that's really the lesson that I see. Many of us fall into the same trap as Alexander, young and ambitious and constantly seeking that next material possession, that next conquest. And say that however you want, that next personal achievement. But to what end? When goals are simply based on attaining more, we all end up unfulfilled, unsatisfied, and ultimately it leads to our downfall. So let's instead focus on what truly brings meaning, what truly brings fulfillment to our lives, and let's strive for balance, let's strive for sustainability, let's strive for intentionality in everything we do. Let's read the books we have before we go out and put another one on the shelf. And I'll take that lesson. I think probably the most succinct way to put this is, in other words, let's do less better. So get your big chief notebook out, get that pen and pencil out, write this journal prompt down, and then ask yourself this question and marinate on it. Am I focused on quality or am I focused on quantity? And a sub-question you might want to ask yourself, where can I do less better? All right, folks, thanks for listening. We got 2 more episodes coming to you this week, but before we go, let me leave you with this. If you want to support this podcast, the easiest way for you to do so is to pick up a copy of my book, In Valor, 365 Stoic Meditations for First Responders. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you get your books. It's available on Kindle or Nook for instant download right now, or you can get the paperback edition on Amazon Prime. It's a great resource for anybody who is in a fast, uncertain, and rapidly evolving profession who wants to practice this philosophy on a daily basis. It's going to give you some quotes, some contextualization that is directly relatable to your modern life. And it's going to give you some daily journal prompts like the one I just gave you, or some action items to help you integrate these lessons. Number 2, you can subscribe to the Substack, the Stoic Responder. You can subscribe over at thestoicresponder.substack.com for free, and you can get these delivered directly to your email inbox 4 times a week so that you never miss an episode. You'll also get on my list for my weekly newsletters. I send those out typically weekly, sometimes twice a week. Sometimes I miss a week here and there, but you're going to get any newsletters I generate and send out. They're going to have Stoic leadership and personal development tips. You're only going to get them if you sign up for free at thestoicresponder.substack.com. And finally, you can like, share, and subscribe this podcast so that others can learn what we're doing here and get a taste of this philosophy for themselves. Folks, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, you are out of roll. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, like, rate, and share this podcast so that we can spread the benefits of Stoicism to other first responders. It will only take you a few moments, but it can help us tremendously. Until next time, out of roll.